Welcome back to Inside the Ring. I'm Max. That's Malik. That's Miami Mike. And this Saturday on Cinco de Mayo weekend, David the Mexican Monster Benavidez makes his cruiserweight debut against Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, who's being trained by our very own Malik Scott. Now, most people are picking David Benavidez. So, Malik, how'd Zurdo pull off the upset here?
Well, first of all, Max, I don't want to disrespect the head coach, Julian Chua, who's done an incredible job with Zurdo in this preparation. But how Zurdo is going to get the job done? Well, I don't give away game plans, but Benavidez has a lot of loopholes. And if there's anybody that could take advantage of those loopholes, it's a tall southpaw that's a good counterpuncher, technically sound, that is courageous, and that's going to show up and be in fight of the year. And not just being fight of the year, I believe he's going to be victorious.
Loopholes. Usually Benavidez is too busy punching holes in guys. Cop, even though you're picking Benavidez, if the headline Sunday morning are that Zurdo won, how did he do it, Cop?
Probably in a dream or something, Max. I think I would start to pinch myself and wake up. But no, jokes aside, I think if Zurdo's going to pull off this upset, which I think will be the upset of the year, I think he's going to have to apply the nonstop pressure, really lean on Benavidez, use his superior strength, his superior size, and make it an ugly, rough and tumble fight. He's certainly not going to outbox Benavidez. He's a lot slower than Benavidez. I think that's the only path to victory that I can see.
Guys, I want to tell you a couple stories right now. 3 stories, all right? You ready for story time with Uncle Max? It might take a minute, but I think you'll like it. Benavidez is about a 3.5 to 1 favorite to win, right? And it feels like the odds should be wider considering the prevailing sentiment about who's going to actually win. But I want to talk about some other big fights in my lifetime where a fighter's gone up in weight and was favored over a named fighter in that higher division. And whether there's a pattern in those fights, and Malik, I'm doing this for you. Carlos Zarate against Wilfredo Gomez. Now, Zarate, listen to this. He was 50-0 with 49 knockouts when that fight came off. He had made 8 bantamweight title defenses, and back then, when there were only 2 sanctioning bodies, he knocked out the other sanctioning body's champion, Alfonso Zamora, who was 24-0, all by knockout, in the 4th round of one of the great fights in lighter division history, the Battle of the Z-Boys. So, Zarate was already an all-time great, 50-0 with 49 knockouts. Now, Wilfredo Gomez had a draw in his first pro fight, and as Malik can tell you, that's not that uncommon, right? 4-round fight, you lose a round or two, a judge doesn't see a round, you wind up with a draw. It happens to a lot of even good fighters. But after that, Gomez had 21 consecutive knockouts, in which, among other things, he won the super bantamweight title. That's a division above where Zarate was, and made 5 defenses, all by knockout. So heading into the Zarate fight, he's 21-0-1, Gomez is, with 21 knockouts. Now, Zarate Gomez was the first real Mexico versus Puerto Rico super fight. And Gomez, right, the bigger guy, was a 2-1 underdog. Zurdo's a 3.5 to 1 underdog, but you get the idea. But Gomez turned out to be the more well-rounded fighter, and he scored the upset, stopping Zarate in the 5th round. So that was Gomez's 6th title defense. Here's the next story, guys. He made another 7 title defenses, Gomez did, after beating Zarate, and then moved up to featherweight to challenge Salvador Sanchez for Sanchez's belt. Now, Gomez-Sanchez was the 2nd real super fight between a Puerto Rican champion and a Mexican champion. So far, Gomez has been involved in both, right? Gomez was by then 32-0, 32-0-1 with all knockouts, 32 knockouts, including 13 title defenses. One of them, of course, the knockout of Zarate. Sanchez was known to be excellent, but he was still in the process of proving his greatness, so he was a 2-1 underdog against Gomez in a fight billed Battle of the Little Giants. In one of the defining fights of the 80s, Sanchez showed why he became everyone's favorite fighter back then. Ask Mike Tyson or Roy Jones or ask me. We'll all tell you the same thing. Sanchez was the man. And he outboxed and outfought Gomez and stopped him in the 8th. And guys, finally, another 2-1 underdog in 2001, Felix Trinidad, who rampaged through welterweight and junior middleweight, moved up to middleweight to compete in a tournament where he eventually met Bernard Hopkins in the finals. Trinidad, 2-1 favorite, as I mentioned, was comprehensively outboxed and finally stopped in the 12th and final round. Now, by the way, same thing. I could give you other examples. Donald Curry, against Mike McCallum, 2-1 underdog. The bigger guy was the 2-1 underdog, scored a knockout. In each of these fights, the smaller favored fighter was upset partly because the bigger guy was a more well-rounded fighter, and partly because the smaller guy was more affected by the shots of the bigger fighter than he'd been by the shots of fighters in his natural weight class, especially because the bigger guy was also a special fighter. So if there's a pattern here, it seems to me you have to hope that your guy, that Zurdo, is not only more well-rounded than Benavidez, but that Benavidez's punch resistance won't be the same at cruiserweight. I yield the floor to Malik.
One thing that you said, a couple examples you brought up, was Bernard Hopkins, Felix Trinidad, Mike McCallum against the Cobra. And what they all have in common, in my opinion, with Zurdo Ramirez is timing. A lot of these guys that move up, they're coming from, even to me, even though this is cruiserweight, Benavidez is known not just for putting his punches together and not just being so resilient and constantly, moving forward and throwing these barrage of punches, but it's the speed he does it at. Yeah. Now, why am I bringing speed up? Is because the only thing that beats speed is timing. And I truly believe timing is one of Zurdo Ramirez's biggest assets. He's fought guys that's been fast. He's fought guys that have hit harder than him. He's fought guys that have put pressure on him. He finds a way because of his extreme timing. And I believe timing, punching in the middle of those shots, especially him being a bigger man. We're going to see Benavidez, how he's going to deal with a real cruiserweight. And we're going to see how he deal with getting punched when he make the mistakes that he makes sometimes. He have, like I said, Max, he do punch a lot of holes in people, but he has a lot of loopholes in his game. And I think timing, and I think not mentioning that Zurdo is an incredible southpaw that don't just move back from punches, but he get under punches. He make good angles. And Julian Chua has just been doing an incredible job with him. And I'm going to remember you, Max, and I'm going to remember Mike Coppinger. And I can't wait to see you guys
Hold on,
Monday.
Mike, before you go, real quick, Mike, I know you're champing at the beginning. Just one more second. I just gave you 4 examples of the upset, the bigger guy scoring the upset. You're mad at me?
I went with the 2 that really favorite our situation the most, and that's Bernard Hopkins and Mike McCallum.
All right, go ahead, Mike. I know you're laughing. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, first off, I want to give Max some credit because we like to make fun of Max on this show for mispronouncing names, but you know what Max did? Max said it right, champing at the bit, and almost everybody says chomping at the bit. Yes. So Max gets a lot of credit for that.
But that's a word,
You're
not
a genius,
a name.
We know.
Yes.
No, but
by the way, if champing was a name, I would get it wrong. I would say chomping, but go ahead.
But I mean, that was amazing. You said he's an incredible southpaw. Can we calm it down a little bit? Incredible. When I think of incredible, I think of like Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. Like all-time greats. So let's chill a little bit.
Floyd is not a southpaw.
Second of all, I think I have a bit of PTSD with Zurdo because I think back to a couple of years ago when Zurdo was fighting Dimitri Bivol, and Julian Chua, who's a great trainer who I respect, told me Zurdo's going to win. Tim Bradley, who I did a show with on ESPN, told me, Zurdo's going to win. I laughed at them. I thought Bivol was going to shut him out. Bivol indeed shut them out. Now, look, you can make the argument that Zurdo's going to be better now at cruiserweight, which I think is true, and that, Benavidez is moving up in weight. You can make the argument that Bivol's a better fighter than Benavidez, but let's just take it with a grain of salt, Max, that Malik works with Zurdo, and Malik should be saying these things.
Well, I'll say this. It's a different style,
I'm
Benavidez.
Going off of the craft, Mike.
Yeah, Benavidez and Bivol have different styles, and I think what this really comes down to more than anything, we acknowledge Benavidez is the guy moving up, right? And that Zurdo's not a bad fighter. So the real question is, as I mentioned, in all of the upsets where the bigger guy was the underdog, he was a special fighter. And Mike does not believe Zurdo's special. I think you think he's good but not special. And Malik is here to tell you he is special. He's better than he looked against Bivol, who has a bad style for everyone. Bivol's really good. And time will tell. It always does. We don't have to wait long, guys. This is not only the biggest fight between 2 fighters of Mexican heritage at this heavy a weight ever, but it's also in the great tradition, in the great boxing tradition of Mexican-American versus Mexican fighter. Oscar De La Hoya, American Olympic gold medalist, was by the middle of the 90s in the process of becoming the face of boxing versus El Gran Campeón Mexicano, Julio Cesar Chavez, who was exactly 100 fights into one of the greatest careers of all time, right? There's many examples. Rising Mexican-American star Bobby Chacon versus all-time great Mexican legend Ruben Olivares in a series of fights in the 1970s. Salvador Sanchez, we've been talking about him. won and then defended the title against Mexican-American TV favorite Danny Little Red Lopez in the early 80s, American silver medalist Michael Carbajal versus the great Mexican world champion Humberto Chiquita Gonzalez in a great trilogy in the 90s. Guys, do you think there is special significance in the big fight between Mexican and Mexican-American? Malik, do you think there is? And if so, what is it?
I think I'm going to consider Cinco de Mayo. I think Mexican versus Mexican is extremely special. But you know what it makes me think of, Max? It makes me think of a fight I've been doing a lot of film study on recently. It makes me think of when Julio Cesar Chavez fought Edwin Rosario. Now, one was Puerto Rican and one was Mexican, but the intensity that fight came with and how the fans got behind it and how Rosario fought his heart out. And I'm talking about fought his heart out off the rope 80% of the fight. The difference with Benavidez and Zurdo, like you say all the time, Max, these just bigger men. And I've never seen Mexican versus Mexican at this high level type of fight with this much at stake with two big men doing it. And not only are they big men with, I would say Benavidez has extremely fast hands. I would say Zurdo, like I said, has extremely good timing. Southpaw. I think this fight has everything for the fans to get by, for the fans to be happy about. It has fight of the year written all over it, and I can't wait. And you all know who I believe is going to win.
All right, Mike, I think there is some significance. Apparently, Malik didn't listen to the question. I was talking about Mexican-American versus Mexican, because these fights usually, Mike, involve a lot of passion from the fighters and the fans and a lot of action in the ring. They also at times has served as a way for the Mexican-American fighter to prove to Mexican fans that he's real and therefore honors his Mexican heritage and fits in and adds to the great tradition of Mexican boxing. Do you think this fight does anything for Benavidez along those lines, Mike?
I think that's a great question, Max, and I think it could not do anything more for Benavidez if he possibly tried. Considering Benavidez, right, has been pushing to take Canelo Alvarez's spot for years, trying to fight Canelo Alvarez, and now he has his golden opportunity, Max, to fight on Cinco de Mayo weekends and plants his flag as the next face of boxing. So yes, I think Benavidez knows how big this moment is. I think he knows he needs a big statement victory. And you're right, he's the Mexican-American, he's also Ecuadorian. Mike Tyson gave him the nickname Mexican Monster, but there will be those that say, well, you're not a real Mexican. And look, Zurdo's a good fighter. I don't want to be disrespectful. Zurdo is a good fighter, but I think Benavidez is special. So you talk about Manny Pacquiao moving up in weight. You're talking about other fighters moving up in weight. Roy Jones to fight John Ruiz. I think Benavidez is special. And if he wants to really be the next face of boxing, he's going to have to win in convincing fashion. It's
far too late for you not to disrespect Zurdo. We've all done it on this show, let's face it. But we are trying to, because we all believe Benavidez is going to win. It's not that we don't think Zurdo's good. We just think that Benavidez is better. Cinco de Mayo weekend, as you mentioned, Mike, has belonged to Canelo Alvarez. Floyd Mayweather before him. Oscar De La Hoya before Floyd. It was all started by Julio Cesar Chavez, really, fighting the big fight that weekend. But that's become the hallmark of the face of North American boxing. If Benavidez beats Zurdo, and he's favored to do it, Malik, it does seem that it takes him closer, maybe even over the top, to make him the face of North American boxing. I mean, if it's not, I believe it's close. All right, guys, Cop, your final prediction for the fight.
Final prediction, Max. I'm going to say Benavidez by decision in a good, tough fight, but I think he's going to win something like 117, 111, 118, 110.
Sounds about right. Malik, what about you?
Not that. Wow, that was very good of you, Mike, right there. And I would call that very fair. I don't want to go too far with the scorecards and what I think, but I just believe it's going to be fight of the year, and I have Zurdo Ramirez winning by decision.
When the bigger guy wins, Malik, in every example I gave you, it's by knockout. It's always by it's Gomez knocking out Zarate, Sanchez knocking out Gomez, Hopkins knocking out Trinidad, McCallum knocking out Curry. I like Benavidez, just like Mike said, by a tough decision. I even like, Mike, your scores. It'll be wide but competitive. Coming up, Richardson Hitchens joins us, and I will get him to legally change his name to Richard Hitchinson. I mean, that name was made intentionally just to mess with boxing fans like me. This is Inside the Ring.
May 2nd, champions collide. David Benavidez, undefeated, unrelenting. Zurdo Ramirez, powerful, punishing.
And there's a left hook!
Can the Mexican monster snatch the crown from the unified cruiserweight king? Plus, Resendiz faces Munguia for the super middleweight title. Mexican warriors battle for the belts Cinco de Mayo weekend.
Are you ready?
Benavidez Zurdo plus Resendiz Munguia live on DAZN pay-per-view.